I'm Felicia Cowden, your Kauaʻi County Council member, and I'm going to share with you our committee meeting for May 1st. And committee meeting means it's where we go in and do a little bit more in-depth discussion, and whatever passes today doesn't necessarily, it's not finished. So we had two housing bills, and they both have to do with affordable housing, and they're kind of small, nuanced pieces, but in the end, they make a big difference. So one of them is called Residential Workforce Housing Credits. This is something that we are trying to look at, basically adapting from what Department of Hawaiian Homelands does. And so when a developer is supposed to build or put something together, right now they're required to do 20% of their units in affordable housing. There are other organizations, and an excellent example would be something like Habitat for Humanity, who does 100% of their affordable units in, 100% of their housing units are affordable. So what this residential workforce housing credit attempts to do is allow an organization that makes more than they need to make. So Habitat for Humanity is one example, but maybe it's a regular developer that chooses to build more than 20% of their development into affordable housing. They could sell those credits to another developer who could buy them and make that decision. And so sounds kind of good. It's certainly better for a nonprofit that is really dedicated to it, because then they would have more money to be able to build more units. But so we had an amendment that, I'm trying to think, I think Kipukai brought this amendment forward, and it was Kipukai through Bernard Carvalho, and so it decided to take only 50%, half of the units that are 120% or less of Kauai median area income, and so that means that's kind of like a middle class earner. 50% of those workforce units could be sold for credits. And then there's also, they could transfer up to 50% of the workforce housing credits imposed upon them, as opposed to 100%. So it was trying to make it be a little less and a little bit more enticing. What our goal is to try and inspire new developers to work harder at creating affordable housing, or because then they would be able to have something that they could sell and make a little bit more extra money. There's a lot of nuances in that. We decided to defer it. We passed that amendment, but we deferred it, so we have another 2 weeks to really be looking at this issue, because you don't want to make mistakes. Then we had another piece, and this one is really for the housing programs, and it's both for the purchases and the rentals, and to decide how to prioritize who gets things. And so especially for the purchasing of the houses, this has a preference that the housing may approve various preferences for up to 50% of the units for sale in a project. So it prioritizes some applicants. The way it is currently, it's first in, first called. And so this wants to set some priorities for project employee benefits. So if a developer's building and they put some workforce housing in, they could maybe say people who work for them can go into those workforce housing units, gives them more of an encouragement to do it. Another choice is geographic preference. So when people live or work in the area near where it is, that they would have a priority in getting into the property. And then something that was added today is essential workforce preferences. So that means an essential workforce providing critical community services such as healthcare, public safety, emergency first response, education, and the provision and maintenance of necessary community infrastructure. Because what we're running into is we can't even do the basics of our service to the public because there's no housing to put these people in. So that's adding it in there. So if a new development comes up where there's workforce housing, it not only goes to the people on the list, but then there's also half of it that could be looked at along those priorities. So that works for the sales. It works for, I believe this has, for the rental housing also. So it would happen, that would also happen for the rental housing. And so it would put, half of it could have those priorities, including the essential workers. So those were the two housing bills in committee that both got deferred to the next committee. So we're not really ready to finish those off. Then what was a very big and passionate discussion, the mayor's office asked us to look at this topic by FirstNet that wants to put a cell tower out in Hyanna. It was very clear that the community out there does not want that cell tower for a number of reasons. And so FirstNet basically is a national effort. I'm going to look at this right here. National effort of having all the first responders making sure that they have a high priority on a communication system. And so AT&T was chosen nationally to be the partner in that. So AT&T would like to put another tower out in Hyanna. They have emphasized the value of it to the first responders. And so that's their point, that's their purpose. And there's a lot of concern from that community because quite frankly, they simply don't want it for a number of reasons, and they are mostly have service already. Not 100%. This would bring, would strengthen the service between KA and Hanalei. And I'm looking for some of the little notes I put on there, but you know, I would say a very big point that was made is there's a lot of other possibilities of how to provide that service, whether that's something that goes through a satellite, is one of the main ways that there's been a big improvement. It would have less impact, it would be more welcome and have broader coverage. It's not a 100% solution in that the radios that the first responders carry have an easier time going right to the cell towers. So that would be the argument for, but it's certainly not like we can't get around it. So it's pretty obvious that I support the community out there. They don't want this. They don't want it in their neighborhood. And so there are two more steps of which they can work to try and stop that, and that is when it has to go for an SMA permit, special management area, and a conditional use permit for the building of the box on it. But I think the community is pretty frustrated. They've been fighting the imposition of a tower out there for 10 years, and they're committed. So we had a very full council room today for that. And I think it was pretty clear that all 7 of the council members supported the community's wants and needs. Then we had 2 more bills that have to do with real property tax. One has to do with real property tax, and that's when a person passes away and they have a surviving partner, husband, wife, that they are able to reclaim their tax rate in case they didn't have things filed right, so that they wouldn't lose their assessment cap and their valuation, and it could fix backwards up to 3 years. Then the very last one has to do with the registration fee for cars, and for some reason regular cars pay $5 per car, but rental cars only pay $1 on their beautification fee. And so this is kind of just equaled it out. It's not charging rental cars more than residential cars. It's just charging them the same amount. And so everybody's going to be paying $5 annually for the beautification fee, which is helping the sides of the roads and different things like that. So that was our committee meeting for May 1st. Thank you.